Every episode celebrates original content written by real people who experience real emotions. I'm Rayanne Thorn Krueger. Welcome to Real Words. The one, the only, the original John Sumser has joined me today on Real Words. Hey, John, thanks for joining me.
Thanks. And you caught me typing in the background right at the
I
beginning of
did.
this.
How do you like
Yeah,
that?
oh,
now
it
I
was great.
now I know what kind of typewriter you have.
Yeah, well, I flunked typing along with a lot of other things.
Oh, I see. I love that about you because you come off in this world in our life as a perpetual student, which means I know you've done a lot of typing.
I really did flunk typing, and it was a very interesting thing. I was a horrible student. Typing was just the tip of the iceberg.
Oh,
Um, but I got through a fluke, I got the 50th IBM PC off of the production line,
oh,
and got handed a computer keyboard, which I spent a lot of time learning how to beat the machine at chess and solitaire, and that got me comfortable with the keyboard. I still am a crummy typist.
you're probably doing more than this though.
Typolator, yeah, no, I do it with 4 fingers now.
Four fingers. Congratulations on that. Now, I know that there's been some recent news about your career. I think you shocked the world with a recent announcement. You want to share that with everyone?
Well, so I am now the vice president of marketing at salary.com, um,
There needs to be
which is,
confetti.
oh, I don't know. I spent 30 years as an industry analyst, um, and I thought maybe I should, instead of talking about how sausage tastes, I thought maybe I should learn about making sausage. And so I am delighted to be absolutely delighted to be on the other side of the coin, and the world looks different, right? And
I love that. I love that you're saying that. I can remember when I first met you, which was a long, long time ago. I used to think, oh, he is so amazing. I think he's a thinker and he's also a doer, but there's a lot of talking about doing, and now you are in the throes of it and doing it. And I just love this for you, John. Thank you for joining me today, even when you are so wildly crazy in your new gig.
well, it's I am having a just an awesome time. The company is amazing. I have been involved with the company in one way or another for 25 years. It is our 25th anniversary, and um,
Well, it's
I
about time
met
they
the
brought you in.
well, I was on the board of directors for a really long time. We went through an IPO, and sold the company to Connexa, who then sold it to IBM. And I wandered off to do other things. You don't do board of directors as a full-time job. Um, and then 3 years ago, I started picking up some projects for them. Because I wanted to. I put together a 20 episode How to Find a Job TV show,
Love that.
um, and did a couple of other things. And then one thing led to another, and I picked up this marketing gig, and it's fantastic.
I just I just love that we're calling a C-suite role as a gig.
Well, I started working when I was 10, and have more or less worked 60 or 70 hours a week ever since. And so they're all gigs.
They're all gigs. Yeah.
They're all gigs.
It never surprised me when we started talking ferociously about the gig economy. I turned to my right and left like, isn't it always been the gig economy? Because I've always had two or three side gigs going on at the same time. And I remember Kelly Robinson saying to me, you can stop all that other stuff now. You have a full-time job. You don't need to do all that other stuff. And yeah, no. I'm some of us are just born to do the 60, 70-hour week, right?
Right, right. And there's something about being on the neurodiverse spectrum and having ADHD that helps.
Maybe.
Maybe I don't know
Maybe.
about you, but I know about me.
I know about me. Well, I was nodding my head in agreement, so I definitely know about me. John has been an absolute mentor of mine for I want to say I met you in 2007,
Yes,
2006,
7 days. I
2007.
think 6 or 7 days now.
It's only been yeah 6 or 7 days, and I had shared with him that I was going to start writing every day on recruitingblogs.com. And John, who's already been doing this for probably a decade at that time, if not more, leaned forward to me like he was telling me this secret and looked one way and looked the other and touched his forehead to mine and said, "You will never be able to do it." And I have told that story with relish over the years because that's all the impetus I needed was
Well,
for the man, the
that
myth,
is
the legend to tell me, "You'll never be able to do it."
that is you, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
If you want to get Rayanne to do something, tell her she can't.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Well, thank you for joining me. I have enjoyed your work as an analyst over the last many years, many, many years. And you're a prolific writer, digital writer. And I know you've probably written countless, countless things that I don't know about. And I would love to know how important, since this show is about original content and about real, I mean, the title is Real Words, and it expanded when I first launched it to include all original content. So that includes photography and art and music, all the wonderful things that I know you enjoy. I'm looking behind you at your son's art, the very talented Ray Sumser, who's a beautiful artist. I have a piece still waiting to be framed around here, so I need to get that up and running. But I would love for you to tell me the importance that writing has held in your life and in your career.
Well, like I said, I was a dreadful student. I was an absolutely dreadful student and graduated at the bottom of my high school class and at the bottom of my college class. Not even that sure how I got into college, actually. And it wasn't that I didn't love learning. I always loved learning. I always loved reading. It was that um, I just couldn't do school. I just couldn't figure out tests, and I couldn't figure out why you would block everything into little 60-minute chunks and stick with them. And so I didn't. I largely didn't do well because I was busy learning stuff instead of trying to get somebody to like me at school. And so I also had a very serious eye-hand coordination problem, so I couldn't write. And that when I went to school, there were no keyboards in classrooms. Everything was written, and I couldn't write very well, and so it was painful to do that stuff. When I finally got a keyboard, the world opened up for me. The world really opened up for me, and I found, like I said, I had the 50th machine. What I found was that if I showed up with a graph, because numbers are part of writing, lots of things are part of writing. If I showed up with a graph, I became credible. And if I showed up with written documentation in a meeting, I became credible because people believed it, because not because of me, but because it came out of a machine. The computer says, and so that was lovely. At the same time, I had it's a long story that I'll tell you sometime. I had fluked into a job as a technical writer. And it's worth telling you the first training bit of my technical writing story. I worked for a guy named Smokey Allen. Um, in this huge defense industry technical writing bullpen. And we were, the big assignment was to write manuals for battle tanks, the M1 battle tank, and we were to translate all of these old-fashioned technical manuals into things that were more like comic books for sixth graders. And so my first assignment, Smokey gives me this pile of 3,000 pages of single print, single spaced
No.
manual about how to fix a tank. And he says to me, I want you to go through this pile of paper, and every time you find the word "the," put a red line through it.
Oh.
And so about a week later, I went to him and I said, I've done it. And he went through and he found all the places where I missed the "thes." And so I got sent back to get 100% of all the "thes" taken out here, red line and everything. And that took a couple more weeks. And then he says, you have a budget of 10%. You can go back and you can pick 10% of the "thes" and write next to them "stet," where you had so this is editorial marking. The line through means don't use it. "Stet" means I didn't mean the line through it. And so you could put "stet" next to 10% of the "thes," and then we'll talk about each one and why you chose to use the word "the" in that sentence. Awesome. I hated every blasted minute of that. Oh man, I would go to bed, I wanted to kill him. It was torture,
Jeez.
but I am such a good writer as the result of that exercise because I learned to choose the simplest part of my language with care. And I learned that a lot of the times that you use words, they're superfluous. So as an editor today, which I do a lot of editing, as an editor, I find that when people don't know what the hell they're talking about, they use a lot of words to say it. And the more flowery it is, and the more laden with words that contain no meaning it is, the more likely it is that they're trying to cover up for the fact that they don't know what they're talking about. And so I am a
Fluff. Just add the fluff and the filler words just to get your word count, and it doesn't really matter because no
exactly.
one's going to read this. Remember?
So when I edit to a 10th grade reading level, because the average college graduate reads at a 10th grade reading level. And so 10th grade is about the right mark to hit. And that looks like 15-word sentences, 3 sentences a paragraph, 1.5 syllables per sentence, and a sparse use of adjectives and prepositions and connective tense.
Right.
I generally look with some disdain on people who use connective words like however and therefore, because it's filler.
It's all filler. It's unnecessary.
And so that was the foundation. And then I had this great experience where won't sound great. I left a secure corporate job and took my young family from the East Coast to California to the job of my dreams, which is another story I'll tell you sometime, and got to the West Coast and got fired. And got really fired. I got humiliatingly fired and
Oh.
had to figure out how to support the kids. Now, the place I got fired from happened to be the first place you could buy an internet account and it was my job to sort of perpetuate that stuff. And so I ended up with internet accounts and Um, the first example of the Xmosaic, which was the first browser, was on my desk. The second example of it was on my desk in that job. And so I knew about the technology, and I started building a business on the web um, by writing every day. And I wrote every day, every single day of the week for 15 years. Um, and it was a completely remarkable and transformative experience. Because
I love
at
that you say that.
45 days, at 45 days, you sort of wonder what's wrong with you. But at some point, if you're writing every day, at some point you run out of things to say. It might take it didn't take me that long to run out of things to say.
I don't
Um,
believe it because you still wrote. I think John Sumser has a lot to say and will always have a lot to say.
but if you were to go back, so I built this company called InterBizNet that was the first place, and where I wrote every day for 15 years. If you were to go back, you could easily say that I said the same thing over and over and over and over and over again for 15 years, because there were some principles that I discovered that merited being repeated in new and interesting ways so that people would understand them more clearly. Um, and
Interesting.
I think if you look at anybody who writes regularly, what you find is a lot of recurring material, and the question becomes, how do you get there, right? How do you? So I always had a must write 500 words a day,
Ooh, the Ernest Hemingway rule. I love
and
that.
and there was nothing could come before that. Nothing could come before that. So some days it was easy. Some days at noon, I would copy and paste the word rose. Uh,
Oh. Now, why would you choose Rose and not Thorn?
um, because I knew you and I didn't want to take your name in vain, but that was
There
a
you go.
different
Thank
life.
you. Thank you. So, like Tom Peters, who changed my life when I saw him speak with Seth Godin, and he repeated the words that writing, blogging changed his life. It completely changed his life by writing every day, by having that forced habit. It changed his life incredibly. The things that he found out about himself, the discoveries that he made about other people, about work, about time and place, everything changed for him. So it sounds like you had a similar experience, a similar awakening. I too had that same awakening, and I've advised my children and a lot of friends, you just need to write every day. If you're trying to find an answer and it's not coming to you, you need to start writing every day. Now, should everybody publish? That's not always everybody should publish, but everybody should write.
Well, I don't know. What in the world would stop you from publishing?
Right. Well, it's different now. You can edit, you can go back and fix. Wise words from John Sumser to me early in my writing career were you have some great storytelling prowess, but you need an editor. And those words were like a knife to the core of me. Oh, yeah. And then as I look back and read the stuff that I was writing back then, definitely needed an editor. And so I appreciate that.
Everybody needs an editor. Everybody
It's
needs an
amazing
editor.
how you can read something over and over and over that you've written and miss that you didn't write a word, or that you wrote it twice, or that you missed a whole thought in there. It's just amazing to me because your brain says one thing as you're reading it, especially
Yep.
if you're have some neurodiverse superpowers like you and I do. So, in particular.
Yes.
So, John, we've known each other for 17 plus years now. And one of the things that drew me to your writing back then, was the constant talk of big data, right? So here we are. Big data has brought us to a new place. First of all, what's the difference between big data and AI?
Marketing.
Says the VP of marketing, and that makes all the sense in the world.
it's, it's just marketing. So it's particularly today with large language models like ChatGPT or Gemini or Perplexity. Um, there's a lot of confusion about what AI is and isn't. And so I like to go back to those big data days when it was clear that artificial intelligence meant math, the mathification of everything, right? And that if you had enough data, you could find patterns, and those patterns would be revealing, and you wanted to organize the data in certain way. It was very early and very interesting because um, um, we hadn't ever had the storage capacity and the processing power to really handle a lot of data all at once. The underlying story of AI isn't about AI at all. It's about processing capacity and storage capacity. And so today on my desktop, um, well, my first PC, the IBM off the line had 8 megabytes. No, not 64K. So 64.
Wow.
I don't even remember what you call them anymore. But it was a big deal. And when you got 128K, that was huge. And then you floppy disks that had 540K were a big deal. And it was a long time before there was a megabyte to be found anywhere. And now I don't know what this thing has. This thing has a couple 3 terabytes of storage, and
Yeah.
um, who the hell knows?
Are you on a desktop?
128. It's a laptop that's lashed to a bunch of monitors.
Okay. Okay.
It's a good laptop, um, and so that processing capacity made a lot of things possible. So when you think about what is AI at the core, do you know what a Monte Carlo simulation is?
I do not.
It's rock paper scissors.
Okay.
Um, it's a um,
If this then.
simple it's a simple binary flipping of coins, basically. But if you do that exercise, a Monte Carlo simulation, 1 trillion times, what happens is patterns start to emerge. And so at the core of all of the AI stuff is this basic intense repetition of trillions of calculations that allow you to see patterns that are not obvious. And in the beginning, that looks like you can munge a lot of data together and find patterns inside of that data that are not obvious from the individual data points inside of that. And that was the earliest machine learning stuff. Um, as processing capacity really exploded in the 20 teens, machine learning got applied outside of raw data and into language, and you have these now. Um, interesting. I don't think they're intelligent at all, but they're interesting tools that predict the sequence of words called large language models, and they don't know anything except if you say Rayanne, Thorn is likely to appear after it more times than Rose. And so it will guess that the next word in a sentence is Thorn after Rayanne, and these days Krueger after that. Um, um, but that's all it is. It's a guessing machine. And it will always make stuff up because of that. So it's machine learning applied to language, and what it does is it predicts the sequence of words. Um, and that's we were complaining earlier in the thing about fluffy language. I like to say that the large language models are the automation of mansplaining. Um, I got in trouble. I got in trouble for that the other day because somebody said their husband was offended by the term mansplaining,
Oh, get
and
over it. Jeez.
but anyhow, so I should not say mansplaining. I should say, you know, that commercial about the Holiday Inn where I may not be a brain scientist, but I stayed at the Holiday Inn
Yeah.
last night. That's what ChatGPT is like. It gets it right much of the time on simple things, but it doesn't get it right a lot of the time on important things.
Right.
And that problem, which, you know, some marketing person is going to get a particularly nice place in hell for calling the fact that machines make stuff up hallucinations, right? Lying is a better
Yeah.
approximation.
Yeah.
Bullshitting is in the same sort of
Yeah.
territory.
Yeah.
Um, and so you have this thing now. There's a lot of money and time and energy being invested in these tools, but they have unpredictable error rates and dramatic liability consequences. And so what you see is a lot of pundits and marketing people talking about the value of AI and very, very slow adoption by users. Very slow adoption by users. Lots of hype,
Is
not
it
much
fear?
utility.
What's keeping
Um,
the adoption rates low?
well, if you were to buy a car and you couldn't predict the error rate of the car, and you couldn't predict the liability consequences of the error rate of the car,
Mhm.
would you buy it?
No. I mean, you could drop
So,
in
so, so,
brain
so I
surgeon
think,
too in there, right?
I
If
think,
you
I think marketing people like to accuse common sense decision making for being fear based, and um, that's pretty self serving. It's pretty self serving. Here you've got this thing, and you can't predict whether it's going to be right or wrong. You
Mhm.
can't say even it'll be right 90% of the time, I guarantee it. You can't say that.
No.
And then you wonder why people don't adopt it. Part of it is so I'm a very, very, very heavy user of large language models, extremely heavy user of large language models. Um, and um, what I know is you have to radically examine the output and take responsibility for the output, so that where there's an error or where there is right, let's say that simply and in line with the conversation. Um, if you use AI, ChatGPT, Gemini, Perplexity, whatever, um, to generate content, you better be the best editor you've ever imagined being. Um, or you're going to do things like I'm sure you've seen the stuff of Google summary things recommending that the way you keep cheese on pizza is by putting glue in the recipe. Right? That's
That's the nonsense that some
hallucination.
yeah, that's hallucination. That's the lie, right? That's the lie.
That's a lie.
One of the
So
lies. One of the many lies.
so
So
so I
how
think what I did
go
I did a great exercise this morning. I went to ChatGPT and because I'm trying to sort out a very big content project. Um, I asked, was it ChatGPT? It was one of them. I said, what are the 500 most important questions about X? And it gave me a list of 500 of the most important questions about X. And because this particular content project is building a database that a large language model is going to use to give answers on the fly to people. The next step is to go generate the answers to each one of those questions, and the next step to that is to validate the utility of those things. But it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work to use the tool, and you can't let something that the other thing that we're exploring very heavily is AI detection systems, right? So you can't publish stuff that is AI generated, because all of the tools that help people find things are looking for AI generated content, and they discount it. So you can't just
Do you think
generate
it will
content.
always be that way, or do you think that AI will actually learn how to speak, right, produce content with emotion, human, feeling like it's human backed, human based?
So
How?
there's two kinds of machine learning, right? One is called unsupervised learning, which is what most things that use machine learning are, and that's you give a big pile of data and you set machine learning loose on it, and it finds patterns. That's how the large language models are all built. The other kind of machine learning is supervised machine learning, which means you think out the structure and then you let the machine learning attach things to the structure. And so to a taxonomy is what that's called. A human being is responsible for generating the taxonomy, and the machine sorts and files against it. So this is like the Dewey Decimal System, and this is like the librarian. But very, very few implementations right now have a supervised learning approach. When you have supervised learning, you can start to calculate error rates, and that's an interesting thing. It's unlikely that all of this hype about the value of large language models is going to turn into a world with supervised learning in it, because this looks cheap and this looks expensive. Um, um, so if you go in and you say, we're going to solve the problem with AI for a nickel, and it actually costs $25, um, the people who had the common sense not to buy this in the first place are now validated.
Right,
so,
right, right.
so I follow a guy named Gary Marcus, and I've been following him for, I don't know, 10 or 12 years. And he is a really capable thinker about AI, and has lived through a number of the AI winters, which I think we're headed into an AI winter. Um, and you can find him on Substack or one of those
Okay,
places. And
okay.
if you Google Gary Marcus and follow Gary Marcus, he provides an interesting regular counterpoint to all of the hyperinflated BS.
Hmm.
Um, and he's of the opinion that you can't get to general intelligence, which is what you're really talking about, this down this path. He's of the opinion, and I agree with him, that this is a cul-de-sac. And once we get to the end of the cul-de-sac, then we're going to have to back up and um, dismantle all of the hype and start over again.
Right, right. I'll definitely follow him. We have a question that came in from LinkedIn, a live question here. So thank you, Damodar, for the question. Hello, both. Is AI really a stuff for common people? I mean, in terms of usage and affordability, you kind of answered that with your last statement. Could you please put some light on it?
Well, I think I covered that pretty well. I find that as long as I'm willing to do the work to validate the stuff that I get out of a large language model, um, it's a very helpful way to get started.
Yeah.
It's a very
That's
helpful
what
way
I've
to
heard.
get
I've heard
started.
that it's a great way to, get lists going, to create an outline, to my concern is, and we can talk about this because it's part of my next question for you, is that many people will take it as the truth without doing the research and the editing. I mean, we've seen it in social media where AI produced content has been shared over and over again, and all it would take is a simple search or, conversation to figure out that that wasn't true. But now it's been perpetuated and shared. And how do you pull that back? It reminds me of that little adage my mom used to say about gossip. If you gossip about somebody, and you want to take it back, well, go put a bag of feathers on their doorstep, wait 5 minutes, and then collect every single feather. That's how easy it's going to be to take back what was perpetuated out into the world. So how do we battle that? How do we battle the false information, the misinformation, the co-opting of somebody's art, or somebody's, the plagiarizing of somebody's words, the taking somebody's photograph and turning it into something really cheesy and futuristic looking? How do we battle that as consumers? How do we battle it as users?
Um, so I spent 5 solid years building ethics boards for AI companies, and the core there are a couple of core ethics problems with AI. Ethics problem one is it's always AI is always built on some existing data set, and all data sets have bias embedded in them. Right. So bias is by far the first and most important problem. The second problem is harder to get at, and it's the one that you're talking about, and that is um, people are lazy. People are lazy, and so if you say, well, if you say this car is going to drive itself, and all you have to do is keep your hands on the steering wheel, you're going to see a lot of people get into trouble because
They're lazy.
paying that level of attention is hard, right? And this is not a new thing. This is
No.
hardly a new thing. Um, Automation has been a part of the landscape for 150 years, and um, every time there's a shift in automation, people get new ways of working that require paying attention in different ways. And sometimes you lose a lot of nuance because it's really hard to pay attention in the new
Right.
way, right? So that's the first piece. Now the um, the second question that you asked there, which is about sort of the protection of intellectual property.
Yes.
Um, so so here's the progression over the course of my life. Um, Producing anything was really hard till that machine hit my desktop about 40 years ago. Um, and then producing content started to get easier and easier and easier. Um, in the old days, when producing content was hard, there were all sorts of interesting rules about protecting that content because it was so hard to produce.
Yep.
But the content today is not hard to produce. And um, um, the ideation around the ownership of material, I think, is probably due for some change. It's due for some change because a keyboard and a couple of $1,000, and you have the capacity. I built a television studio in my garage for $3,500. You know,
Yep.
It's not like um, I'm Stanley Kubrick and this is 2001. It's
Right.
when you couldn't do anything, when it was hard to do stuff like that. It was in my garage and you couldn't tell. Um,
Yeah.
and so I'm not sure that the concern about I guess I don't share the concern about my own work, right?
I'm part of
Because
a
I'm so surprised when somebody consumes it that
well,
that
they that's the problem. They do, right? I mean, they're
well,
I'm part of a group. I'm just pulling it up real quickly on Facebook that's called Artists Against Generative AI. And it's I just wanted to join it to find out what are they saying? What are
what
they
are they
talking
saying?
about, right? Well, it's interesting. There's a lot of some of the rules are they can't post AI or links to AI because they don't want to give more credence to that. But one thing, like just today, somebody wrote, "Well, scrolling the nightmare we now know as Facebook." And here we are talking on Facebook. I passed no less than 4 advertisements about AI stuff, but this one took the cake. First of all, Leonardo would turn in his grave if he learned about the misuse of his name. Second off, I know this also exists for those VR modeling apps, and I really detest it, but I couldn't help but notice it had 151 comments where none of these ads had a single one. So I wondered if any like minded people were sharing their honest opinion about this scummy garbage. So it's that kind of stuff that they're sharing. And some people are sharing their own original art. A lot of it is about concern. Making it uncopyrightable is not enough, anonymous participant. They need to make it a law saying you can't profit off of a generative AI. My husband called it degenerative AI last night. I think I need to trademark that. So, so it's interesting that there is a lot of fear. And John, there are 138,000 members in this community.
So do you know that books weren't the printing press was in the 1600s somewhere, but books were not widely available until the dawn of the 20th century. And there are these great stories about Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln, his parents let him stay up at night reading by the light of the fireplace.
I remember this.
The other parents in the community were really upset because no good farmer would ever read all night, and no good farmer needed to know how to read. And
Mm-hmm.
so my reason for telling that story is that advances in literacy always have this kind of blowback. And what we're seeing is another advance in literacy that is um, threatening to old people. Right? I swear to God, you will not find any 20-year-olds in the We Hate AI chat groups.
Right.
Um,
Right.
right? Right? It's threatening to people who have a way of doing things. Uh, but but that's all been changing. In my time on the web, the InterBizNet was the first place that an ad was sold on the internet. My little company, we sold ads and nobody knew what to do because you weren't supposed to do that because the internet didn't have ads in those
Right.
days.
Right.
Um, right. And it was one of the first couple of places where somebody was writing every day. Um, it was blogging before there was a word for it. I used to hate the word blog because what I did was write.
Right.
Um,
Right. Exactly.
but so part of my career was consulting for the big newspaper companies as they were losing their business because the web was coming on board and there were new ways of doing stuff. And there was a lot of this kind of BS
Oh,
about
I remember.
how awful it is, and um, it's just noise. It's just noise. There is not a Well, it's like streaming royalties in Spotify. The people who complain about streaming royalties in Spotify are the people that nobody listens to. it's not it's not the same when you have worked to build an audience.
Right.
I will guarantee you that the people who are complaining in the Facebook groups, you've never heard of any of them,
Yeah.
right? Because they haven't taken the time. Creating content is great. Building an audience is really hard. And in the absence of the 20th century's infrastructure for audience development, which is owned by studios and publishing houses and newspapers, you have to do it yourself. And it's really hard work, and
It's
it's not
hard.
like writing at all.
No, it's very different. And so let's talk about. I'm compelled to ask you about art
Ah,
because your son is an artist. You're a consumer of art. I don't know if are you an artist yourself? I mean, do you draw? Do you
um,
paint? Do you
I
sculpt?
have
Do you?
made I have made my living for a very long time by following my curiosity, and I think that's what artists do, is they
I
follow their
love that.
curiosity.
I love that. I know that you're a musician.
I am a musician.
I know that. So let's talk about that. Will it- let's ask, does Ray is Ray concerned about it? Is he worried about somebody taking his art and degenerating it with AI? And is
No,
he
no,
worried at
because
all about that?
he's a producer. He's not a hoarder, and so he's not worried about that.
Okay.
He goes like I do, like I think most great. That's probably uh, too superfluous. Most people I think of as artists have a touch of neurodivergence, right? And so they run down a rabbit hole as far as they can run down the rabbit hole, and then it runs out, and they back up and they run down another rabbit hole, and they back up and they run down another rabbit hole. And what's
That
important to
explains my
them,
piles of laundry and dishes and
what's what's important to them is the journey, not the rewards.
Mm,
There are some, right? But it's a very, very thin veneer on the top. The human creative enterprise is a big, big deal, and only a few people make magnificent headline livings out of it. Most of the people who do creative work um, really do it for the joy of creation, not for the joy of commerce.
do you ever get tired of learning?
Oh God, no. No, there was a point, I don't know, it might have been 10 years ago, where I realized that I was never going to be able to learn it all, and that was like the best day of my life. Um, it was I am learning more and faster today than ever before. I'm doing the best work I've ever done.
You got a pretty good
Um,
processor up there.
well, I don't know about that, but um, I enjoy, probably in this order. I enjoy words and wordplay a lot. I enjoy discovering things that I didn't. Well, it's as simple as, if there's a road between here and there that I haven't turned down, I'll almost always turn down that road to go see what's there, because I don't want to go the same way twice in a row. I want to know all the back roads. I want to know all the side things, all the details that are out there.
A
And
road
that
less
is
taken, and that has made all the difference.
and that is a source of delight that I don't know how you get some other way. I believe in routine and doing things like writing, but only as a means to exploring things. And so you get a routine that's a rhythm and that allows you to go explore things that you don't know anything about.
I,
Um,
I love that. I can't thank you enough for hopping on Real Words with me and sharing your
well,
experiences and your ideas. I think that part of the magic of John Sumser is that you are a perpetual student and also willing to let go of a former belief or teaching and move forward, just to keep moving forward. And I think that makes each of us a better student when we're willing to recognize we don't know everything. And perhaps what we thought we knew wasn't the best thing to know, and we need to learn something new or different. And I, I can't, I mean, you're one of my favorite people on earth, and I really appreciate you spending this time with me. Do you have
well,
any?
we have to close this with the Tuella story. So I was
Oh,
born.
yes.
I was born. If you go to Utah and you go to Salt Lake City and you go south of Salt Lake City on the interstate to the place where it bends west to go across the Salt Flats, there is this crazy town called Twilla, Utah. And I was born in Twilla, Utah, um, because there was a military base there. And this military base, all I knew about Twilla, Utah, till I was in my 30s, was um, that a lot of sheep died from nerve gas poisoning on the hills of Twilla, Utah. And when I met you, it was in the time where I was first learning about my real roots there. And it turns out that you're the only other person that I have ever met in my whole life who has Tooele, Utah in their background. Um,
And it's a I mean, as soon as you said it right now, I get emotional about it because it marks a time that I alone got to spend with my father. When I was 10 years old, he told my mom, I'm taking Rayanne and we're going on a motorcycle trip to Utah, living in Southern California. So 700 miles each way. And he had a Harley Davidson and with one of those sissy bars and the extra passenger seat on it. And I hopped on and we drove to Utah. And as we were on our way to my grandparents' house in Provo, Springville area, my dad said, we're going to take a detour here and we're going to go to where I went to high school, where I lived when I was in my teens. And so he always spoke of this place with magic. And I can remember um, getting off the bike at the gas station there and taking my helmet off and hearing the sounds of insects and soft breeze, and the air was different. The air was just different there.
yep.
And we got gas, found a hotel. So my dad did this kind of thing without planning, so there was no pre-plan, no hotel
Yay!
reservation. We were lucky
Yay!
enough
That's
to
right.
find a place to stay. This was pre-hotels tonight, and the next morning he said, "I want to take you to a little bakery in town, and then we're going to go to the. I want to show you my high school." And the magical thing about the high school was that they had one of those under the gym swimming pools, right? So he was so excited, thought we were going to get a tour, because he didn't plan and
Right.
didn't realize that as we pulled up to the high school, there were crowds standing around, and he didn't realize that that was the day they were imploding the high school. And we
Wow.
stood on the side of the road and watched as that high school was imploded. Explosives had been laid the day before, and it was a big celebration for the town because a new high school was going to be built, and it was an emotional experience for him to witness that. And but at the same time, he was so excited to be there for it. I mean, how you can't plan any better than that, right? So it was so for me, Tooele will always have this connection to my father, and to have you have the same kind of connection with a small unknown town in rural Utah was pretty special. So we're definitely
So,
connected by Tooele.
so you should write Rayanne and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance.
Oh, I
Um,
should. I should. I should. It was quite a trip on the way home. He let me drive from, or was it on the way there? Anyway, I drove the length between Mesquite and Las Vegas. I wasn't really driving, right? I had my hands on the steering on the handlebars, but I wasn't really driving. He was doing the whole thing, but I would never do it now. My dad was known to fall asleep at the wheel, so it was probably not a good. It's good. It's good to be 10 years old, right?
it is.
So, thank you, John, so much for joining me today on Real Words. What an honor, what a privilege to have you here to talk about the future, the past, and what's next. So, what's next for John Sumser?
What's next for John Sumser? Well, I've taken up Japanese cooking fairly seriously,
I
and
know you have.
the heart of Japanese cooking, the way that I'm learning it, are clay pots called danabes, and um, I'm getting so we live in a town called Healdsburg, which is at the heart of wine country, and um, there's a restaurant in town called Single Thread, which is one of the top 20 restaurants in the world, and they use these danabes to do their $500 a plate dinners, and they have a farm out 4 or 5 miles from here, that we get our CSA box from. And my son, who just graduated from college, uh, is working on the farm this year. And my dog Carlos, who would usually be in the background, is at the farm working with Holden today. And
Oh,
they'll come
wow.
back with some stuff that we can make Japanese food out of tonight. So we have this um, our very own farm to table thing going on right now.
I love that. I blame you for my Donabi purchase because you posted something about it, and I researched and bought one from
Toiro, yeah, yeah. There,
Toiro, yeah.
I have to come down and visit you and stop. Well, I'd actually be going to Toiro and catching you as a side
There you
trip.
go. Let's do it. Let's do it. It sounds like a plan. So again,
Yeah.
thank you so much. Such a pleasure. I look forward to following you and seeing all the new things and smartest move salary.com ever made was
All
bringing
right.
in.
Well, thank you. This was fun.
My pleasure, and we will see everyone next time here on Real Words. Thanks for tuning in. This episode was made possible by Never Enough Media.